I swear I'm not being paid by HBO to promote their platform, and I will prove it at the end of this video. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. I was gonna wait to make this video until the season of the show was over, but the season is halfway through and I just want to discuss. So I have talked a little bit about this show in some short form content. I'm trying to try out YouTube shorts and TikTok to do more like quick reviews and recommendations. And I started with this show called The Sex Lives of College Girls. Still trying to figure out how I want to use short form content. So I know I've talked a lot about this show and I feel like embarrassed for being like so obsessed with it and telling people about it. I haven't seen much discussion of the show online. Usually when I start a new show I really love, I will go to Reddit and see if there's a Reddit community for it, see if there's talk about it, and usually that scratches my itch for discussion of a show. But this one is maybe still too new, too early to have much discussion going on. But I'll talk about what kinds of comments I've seen out there about it and just discuss the first 5 episodes. So the first half of this video, I'm going to give y'all like backstory about the show, my typical like is it worth watching and recommendation for it. And then in the second half of this video, I'll talk about the journeys of each of the 4 main characters in the first 5 episodes and sort of predictions of where I think they're gonna go, what I'd like to see from them, things like that. So let me just start with the question I typically ask in my videos about new media, and that is it worth watching? Obviously, I say yes for the most part. It's not the kind of show I would recommend to like anybody. It's a little more niche than that. It is a show that is pretty women-centered. It's kind of girly. The setting is obviously college. So I think if you like teen and high school type media, like teen movies, or just kind of lighthearted comedy, like maybe like NBC sitcoms and things like that, I think you'll enjoy this show. It is a bit cheesy, but the reasons I like it and I'm liking it so much so far, well, there's a few reasons. So I think the college setting is really great and it's a really unexplored setting in media and comedy. The default is always to make a show about high schoolers, make a show about teens, and you can name a million shows that cover high school. There's very, very few that cover college and the college experience. I think it's kind of a missed opportunity because you can do a lot more with a setting in college. Your characters have more autonomy, more independence, being legally adults over 18. There's not as much weirdness about like casting older actors for the roles. It feels less weird to have college-aged people having sex than high school age kids. Like that now with high school media makes me uncomfortable that there is so much sexual activity going on with shows like Riverdale and Euphoria, which I don't watch Euphoria, but you get what I mean. Like these high school shows just like go over the top with the amount of independence their characters have, and just like it doesn't feel real. And I really like this show for exploring the college setting. It still has all the same feelings of high school, but it just feels less weird that the characters are put in adult situations. I just like the choice of setting. It feels kind of refreshing. And the main issue with it is that it's not as relatable, perhaps, because college is an expensive experience to have, and not everyone has the same college path, while everyone has, for the most part, similar high school experiences. I feel like that's maybe where that choice comes from, but as someone who went to college and had a pretty traditional college experience, this show feels really relatable and really funny. And so far, this show has just captured all of the cringiness of being a freshman and like sort of the whirlwind of going into a typical college experience as a freshman. It like pokes fun at all the types of people you meet in college. The show does a really good job of having like a wide variety of characters. And so far, the 4 main characters that we're following are characters with a lot of depth. It feels like it's realistic and accurate while still dramatizing the college experience enough for the characters to have like clear story arcs and stuff. It's not just like slice of life, like total realism. It has just enough to be like accurate and relatable and still be just like accessible and easy to watch. Plus, it also feels modern. The dialogue is pretty fresh as far as dialogue for this type of media goes. It mentions and acknowledges social media without putting it at the forefront to make it feel like dated in a few years. It references like current pop culture without like hitting you over the head with it. A lot of times with these types of shows, they try to make them like either super evergreen, like they don't mention social media at all so that it never feels dated, or they rely heavily on social media and it's something the writers might not understand that well and they just like misuse like going viral and plot devices like that read as very out of touch or get dated after just like a couple years. And so far on Rotten Tomatoes, it seems to have a 95% rating, which is pretty good. The Metacritics and things like that rate it more around like the 7.5 out of 10 range, which seems normal for this type of show. So overall, yes, I do think it's worth watching if you had some sort of traditional college experience or like just like female friendship type media. So let me get a little bit into the background of the sex lives of college girls before I get into my discussion. So I don't know if I've mentioned, but the show is available to watch on HBO Max. As of the time I'm making this video, there are 5 episodes out, and it looks like the season's gonna have 10 episodes total. The series was created by Mindy Kaling and written by her and Justin Noble, who is a writer on Mindy Kaling's other show on Netflix called Never Have I Ever. And if you've been around my channel for a little while, you know that Never Have I Ever is one of my favorite Netflix original shows. It's more coming of age and more family focused because it is a high school show. It is a show that is more targeted at younger people, so it's a little more like cartoonish as far as the characters go, a little bit cheesier with the dialogue, which I personally like and appreciate in media. But I was excited when Mindy Kaling was talking about the Sex Lives of College Girls coming out this fall when she was promoting the season 2 of Never Have I Ever. I was like, this is great. I think maybe this college show is going to be like a more mature Never Have I Ever, and it definitely met my expectations. The main premise of the show is it follows the lives of 4 freshman roommates at Essex College. So it's like a small New England type college. It's in Vermont, actually. And according to Wikipedia, it is covering their sexually active lifestyle as they deal with different struggles and hardships that college brings. The show is not like sex focused. It involves sex in it, obviously. And the main characters are sexually active in certain ways. But the show is really about these 4 characters' lives as they start their freshman year at Essex College. The working title when it was announced in the fall of 2019 was just College Girls, which I think would have been a way better name, but whatever. And the lead cast, the 4 main characters, are played by Pauline Chalamet. You heard that right, Chalamet, as in Little Timmy Tim's sister, Amrit Carr, Renee Rapp, and Aaliyah Chanel Scott. Renee Rapp, who is one of the main girls, apparently played Regina George in the Mean Girls Broadway musical. Like, her character doesn't sing or anything, so I was just kind of like, oh, she sings. That's kind of crazy. And when this show was announced, and I remember this, apparently Dylan Sprouse is gonna play Layton's brother character. He got replaced at some point, and I'm glad. So when I started the show, I had totally forgotten that Dylan Sprouse was supposed to be in it. I'm glad I forgot, because if not, I would have been like waiting for him to show up the whole time, been like, oh, I wonder where Dylan Sprouse is. But I would have loved to see him. I'm sad he wasn't there. He's supposed to be the nice one of the Sprouse twins. So let me get into a couple of critiques before I get going into my discussion. I kind of want to make it clear, because I know I'm raving about this show so much, and I rave so much about Never Have I Ever. I'm not necessarily a Mindy Kaling stan. It's weird because in her work, I see her biases come through a lot. Mostly it's just her love of like white guys, which it's kind of, it's a weird thing, but I can't not mention it. Because in the show, in Sex Lives, there's so many times when the characters will be like, this guy is so hot. And it's just like the most average looking guy. I think with Mindy Kaling's media, I just have to like suspend disbelief and just kind of believe whoever they tell me is hot. I just need to like believe they're hot for the story purposes, you know? That's kind of just something to get past. And that's part of like my main criticism of Mindy Kaling's work. She can just be a bit problematic in her biases. And I didn't totally notice this until the Mindy Project, which I've been watching like on and off casually for the past year or so. It sucks because I really love Mindy's character. She's so flawed and so funny, and she's problematic as well, that character. I liked how flawed she is, and she's funny, but the amount of white men on that show, like, I'm not even joking and being like critical, like, there's probably like 5 white men on the show, and it feels like every season they add like 2 more. I literally can't keep up. I'm not even trying to be dramatic. I'm not trying to be woke about it. It's like there's no variation in the characters. And I don't think Never Have I Ever has a bigger problem. They did a really good job with like casting on that show. I see it less there, but in Sex Lives of College Girls, it is coming out a bit and like who the love interests all are. I don't want to ignore the weird elements of Mindy Kaling's writings, but I do just really appreciate how she makes characters that have a lot of depth and complexity and flaws. Like the other side of the token is when a show will put in like diverse characters and then make them very perfect. They're afraid to make them have any real flaws, even small flaws, which then makes it feel like those characters aren't real people. So I like how Mindy Kaling has quite a good variety, and especially with the 4 main characters, they did a good job writing them to be very like complex characters that aren't just like one thing. Another kind of critique that I've seen out there a little bit in the little discussion I've seen about the show is that it can read a little girl bossy. I think the show is new enough that it's not as like girl bossy at all as like the Bold type, which is kind of like for me the epitome of that type of show that's all about like women supporting women and whatever. The Sex Life of College Girl doesn't go that far, and I like so far how they're treating the relationships between the 4 roommates. It's not all like sunshines and rainbows with them, but I think to some people it's still a little cringy girl bossy vibes, which is understandable. But I also it's hard to distinguish because I feel like freshman girls in college might actually act like that. Like sometimes I feel like because a character is cringy, audiences think like this show is cringy, and it's like, no, like this is a cringy character on purpose because she's an 18-year-old college freshman who is very naive about the world. Like, so sometimes it's hard to distinguish if like the whole show is cringy or is it just like characters that act cringy because that's the character and that's how the character would be in real life. And by far my biggest critique of the show is the name. I think the name is a big miss. I think they should have stuck with the original name of College Girls, or just The Lives of College Girls would be fine. I think the word sex really intensifies the title. First of all, it makes me feel like pervy typing it in, like to look up discussion about it. It's bad for algorithms, so like if they make any online content associated with the show or content like this of people reviewing or commenting or spreading the word about it, these platforms sort of censor that the word sex and any words like that are flagged. When I put in tags for this video, it's going to tell me I have a bunch of flagged tags because just the word sex appears so much in the tags. It's not smart for the type of show it is. It's so much more lighthearted, and it's not all about sex. Like, for example, a show like Sex Education on Netflix, it's about like sex therapy and that concept. So it makes more sense why it is named that. But in this show, it's really just about these 4 women's lives that include sex here and there. So I just don't think it's like that descriptive, like that accurate of a name. I think it's just bad for algorithms and makes you feel awkward. It makes me feel awkward recommending it to people because it sounds possibly like a porn. I don't know. Maybe they were like, trying to get people to check it out from shock factor, like sex sells kind of thing. Maybe they were inspired by like Sex in the City. And I bet this was a fight and someone fought for this name hard because I'm sure a million people told whoever, it was a Mindy or whoever, that it's not a smart idea to name it this. They won, whoever was fighting for it, and I agree with whatever marketing people told them. This is a bad idea. So finally, let's talk about the first 5 episodes. I think what I'm going to do here is go character by character and their journey throughout the first 5 episodes. First, we have Kimberly Finkel. She's a pretty sheltered white girl from a small town and comes from like a working class family. She doesn't come from a lot of money. She is in a work-study program to pay partially for her tuition. I have seen some criticism on Reddit that the town she's from, called Gilbert, Arizona, is actually not very small and it's not as white as they claim. So maybe they should have just chosen a different town that's maybe a little smaller. They should have just made up a town, honestly. And Kimberly, to me, she's pretty like hard to like at first, but I warmed up to her over the first 5 episodes. She is definitely the cringiest because she is so sheltered and naive and ignorant, but she is neurodivergent coded. I would say she's autistic coded. She exhibits a lot of traits of neurodivergence, and I definitely relate to that. I feel like out of the 4 main characters, I relate to Kimberly the most. I came into college very naive like that. I don't like fully relate to a lot about her, but she's also the one that comes to college trying to maintain a long distance relationship with her high school boyfriend, who within like the first episode comes to visit and takes her virginity and then breaks up with her, which is pretty fast. A lot of people that came in with high school boyfriends, it takes like a good semester or 2 to end the relationship, from a lot of what I saw. I'm glad they just kind of sped it up, but I think Kimberly reminds me of a lot of people that come to college from smaller towns or more sheltered. I think she's a very realistic character, and despite like how nepotism-y it feels at Pauline Chalamet was cast in this, I think she plays this very nerdy character pretty well. She starts off her job, which is just working at a cafe at school. She starts off that job pretty rocky with her coworkers who are pretty annoyed by her at the beginning because she's trying to she's basically taking the job too seriously when the other 2 are just trying to kind of get by. The coworkers are Kanan and Leela. I think those are their names. And she starts off pretty rocky with Kanan, assuming a lot of racist things about him. The way that him and Leela make fun of her for it and, mess with her for it, I think that was funny and, appropriate. I was definitely on their side with how annoying she was being. She was being, classic cringy freshman, trying too hard, doing too much. And after she sticks up for him, they warm up to her a little bit, and I think that was a pivotal moment of them realizing, oh, she's also poor. She's also struggling to pay for things in college or struggling with, the class differences. They find some common ground with her on that, at least. And after that, they sort of become friendly towards her, which I don't know how realistic this whole thing is. Now, a lot of Kimberly's journey is about discovering, class differences and elitism, and navigating that as someone that doesn't come from money, which I think is a very real struggle for lots of people that go to college and aren't of wealthy backgrounds. She really struggles with her intro French class, which back home, French was her best subject, but in college, she can barely keep up with her peers. The professor tells her, you should probably drop this class, it's too hard, which, again, very relatable. This show just has so many little details that just remind me of college, make me nostalgic, and just it's very rich with college-y things. So the professor telling you to drop a class because it's too advanced, it happens. Socially, she's often being pushed outside of her comfort zone by mostly Bella, one of her roommates. She goes to like a frat party and a naked party, which I'm just like, do people have naked parties? Someone on the subreddit said people do have naked parties at those colleges, which I'm like, I don't remember any naked parties here in Texas. I'm sure I wouldn't have been invited, but. And Kimberly's main love interest so far is a guy named Nico, who is actually the brother of one of the other roommates, Layton. She kind of has her eye on Nico from the very first day. Throughout the first 5 episodes, he's given her sort of mixed signals about whether he's into her or not. She actually asked Nico to tutor her in French because she doesn't want to drop the French class, and he's really good at that subject. She's just like confused about whether he likes her or not. Like at the first frat party she goes to, because he's like the head of a frat, she gets a drink spilled on her and he lends her a shirt. But then when he's tutoring her, he asks her for her signature so that he can get credit for the tutoring hours, which I thought was fine. I don't think that. But she took it as like, oh my god, he views our relationship as transactional. They make plans to watch the Golden Girls, and then he blows her off, forgets about it once she gets there. But then she posts a picture on Instagram of a nice dress, and he comments kind of a little bit of a thirsty comment. Not really, just like a complimentary comment. He walks her home after another frat party later on. So it's pretty confusing if he's really into her or not. My prediction is that he's gonna be kind of a fuckboy about it, and maybe they'll hook up and he'll just kind of, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going serious with anybody. And her crush on him is very like schoolgirl crush, like it's pretty like freshman-y. I don't think she should be that heartbroken if they hook up and he's not into her for a relationship or something. It doesn't mean she won't be, but I feel like he's not boyfriend material for her either. So it just feels like they're trying to make this will they or won't they dynamic to them, but I don't see it going into a relationship. And I feel like they shouldn't write that for the show. They don't need to be dating. So next we are introduced to Bella, who is an Indian American aspiring comedy writer and is very sex positive and obsessed with having sexual experiences in college. It seems like with Mindy Kaling's work, she often has sort of a stand-in for herself, and Bella is that stand-in for Mindy Kaling, which I appreciate. I think all writers have stand-ins for themselves, and it's just harder to notice when like you see a white guy writing a white guy. Bella feels like an outlet for Mindy Kaling's own experiences a bit, which with the stand-ins for Mindy Kaling characters, I always wonder how much is true of what that character experiences, like how much is based on a true story of Mindy Kaling's, because like the parts with Bella interacting with like the comedy group on campus feel very like real and ugh, gross. So Bella's big goal, aside from having a lot of sexual experiences, is to write for the Kaling, which is the comedy publication of the school, and it has a very high success rate for graduates of that. She is super persistent with trying to get into this group, to the point of being very annoying to this group and pissing some of them off. One of the first things she does is give handjobs to all of the hiring committee, or like the selection committee for the group, which pisses off the girlfriends of those guys, who, like, it's the guy's fault for accepting it, but whatever. So she gets off on the wrong foot with the female comedy writers, but ends up mending that relationship. The girlfriend that got pissed off at her was the one who, like, stood up for her in the first round of cuts. Through these first 5 episodes, she's going through like an extensive sort of audition process for this writers group, the Kaling. Like I said, she's also very boy crazy and really wants to like date a guy with abs, but then gets mad when the guy is just hooking up with her because she's funny. She's kind of very emotional, very over the top and dramatic. In one of the later episodes, she attends a Kaling alumni gala type thing, and is trying to get this older alumni guy to mentor her. And then at the event discovers that he is a really toxic racist and sexist guy. She ends up standing up to him and yelling at him, like telling him he hasn't worked in 10 years and he's not that funny and things like that. Because of that, he retracts his donation to the group. So that kind of pisses off some of the leaders of the Catalan. In episode 5, she invites herself to a Catalan wine and cheese party. She kind of embarrasses herself in front of everybody by not knowing about wines and stuff. But one of the lead editor guys of the Catalan like takes her aside and bonds with her and gives her notes on a piece, but then proceeds to like show her a porn video, which is like really creepy and weird. And that kind of shakes her up a bit, understandably so. And that's kind of where we left off with her. For her character, I feel like that's a really awkward thing and dynamic to have with one of the leaders of this Catalan group. She got like useful notes for one of her pieces, but had this weird and gross thing happen to her while doing that. I think the parts with Bella being around the comedy group are the most like intense of hers, because a lot of the time she's kind of like a side character being the comic relief of the scene. It's the parts of the comedy writers that feel painfully real, and because I know she is kind of a stand-in for Mindy Kaling, I just wonder how many of these things happen to female writers. I'm sure often. And the way like the comedy writers always treat her, trying to pigeonhole her as like a woman writer. She's just treated like garbage by these comedy guys. And I believe, you know, this is kind of based on truth. So I'm excited to see where Bella's story goes. I think she's gonna keep having these difficult moments with the comedy group, and she's gonna have to like compromise her values partially to be part of that group and get the success she wants. I could see her being the one to get an STD at some point, an STI or something, because that's part of college and someone's gonna end up there, I think, in the show. Next we have Whitney, who is a star soccer player from Seattle, who is the daughter of a U.S. senator. So Whitney's story is the one that gets me the most heated, the most upset and yelling at the TV, but I'm glad that they are putting this story in this show. It's infuriating, but at the same time, I think it's important to show. She is having an affair with her assistant soccer coach. We start off the show with them already having some sort of sexual relationship. We don't see how that developed, which is kind of weird. Like, I wish we could have seen like how that came about, because it was like the first day of school and they were already like having some sort of relationship. So I'm not sure why. But soon after, we find out that he is married, and Whitney just finds out by running into him somewhere else, and his wife is there with him. Aside from being like a predator and having an inappropriate relationship with a student, he is also married. Every scene with him, I'm just so angry. But like, I think if any young girls are watching this show, I think it's important to show how men like this are. They like pretend to be all young and charming. His storyline is gaslighting 101. Like, he keeps telling her he's gonna break up with his wife, that they don't sleep together anymore, that he loves her, he loves Whitney. Whitney's also having trouble like integrating into her team very well, because a lot of her team, and mainly one girl on the soccer team, really hates her for who her mom is and believes she got sort of a star soccer player role because her mom's a senator. So she starts off kind of rocky with the team. She makes one really close friend named Willow, who helps her navigate the team a little bit. And eventually she does mend things with Jen, who is the one who hated her on the team. They sort of bond over men being trash to them. Whitney's also like one of the cooler girls. I would say Bella and Kimberly are sort of like the lame girls on in the four roommates. Whitney is more like cool, and for example, she gets invited to the Kappa pre-brunch thing, sorority thing with Layton, the other roommate, but quickly realizes that that's not really her scene, and she loves like the dynamic of her soccer team a lot more. She's often having to balance hanging out with Dalton, the creepy soccer coach, and like her team and her friends, and having fun with them, which is like classic this kind of guy. It just sucks. Like, there's also like a moment where Whitney says, "I'm not into boys, I'm into men." and things like that. And it just feels so like those women I've seen fall for men like this, and how they feel it is so consensual when they're really actually being taken advantage of and don't realize. So towards the end of the first 5 episodes, Whitney tries to expose sort of the inequity between male and female student athletes. She finds out that the male soccer team gets all this cool swag and a nicer locker room, even though they've been losing. She tries to expose the difference in the locker rooms, but accidentally videos on Instagram Live like a naked guy from the team. She gets in big trouble for this with her coach. The coach gets so mad she suspends her for 2 games, but then her mom calls a meeting with them to complain that they suspended her. Whitney didn't intend for her mom to do this and threaten the coaches to fire them and stuff, but she's sort of realizing how her mom reacts. Whitney was just telling her like, oh my God, I'm sad, I got suspended from these games. And the mom took it into her own hands. I think Whitney's journey so far has been also realizing like her mom's power and sort of underestimating how her mom being a senator impacts the dynamics with others. Also earlier, Willow, who's Whitney's best friend on the soccer team, does find out about the affair with Dalton and vows to keep it secret. But at the very end, when the senator mom calls the coaches and has that whole scare of threatening to fire them and stuff, Dalton realizes that like if their affair gets found out, it's going to be a huge public scandal because of who her mom is. Because he freaks out about that, he breaks it off with Whitney. This is so cowardly because if the mom wasn't a senator, he'd be like, whatever, but now it's over the line. I'm glad he broke it off with Whitney because I just want him gone from her life and far away from her and any student. But he's just such a coward and such a predator, honestly, for doing this in the first place. He also like tells her the classic gaslighter line, like, we both have a lot to lose if this gets found out. And it's like, no, bitch, you have a lot to lose. She is a victim of a predator and you are the predator in the situation. I'm glad they put this storyline in, but it is making me stressed. Women need to see this and need to know how to recognize this type of horrible, trash male behavior. I don't know where the storyline's gonna go. I mean, I hope the predator gets found out in some way. I think he will, and I think Whitney's gonna have a lot of guilt for that, and I hope he leaves her alone. I just want him gone. But I'm not sure how it's all gonna play out. That storyline has kind of the biggest stakes, and I'm definitely intrigued, but I'm scared of what's gonna happen. And I do hope Whitney continues to be able to have fun with friends. A lot of these times Dalton is like kind of keeping her from having fun and having college experiences that she should be having. And finally, the last roommate we have is Layton, which is a very interesting character. She is an affluent legacy student from New York City who is also a closeted lesbian. She gives me very Gossip Girl vibes because she is a rich girl from New York. At the very beginning, Layton tries to room with her high school best friends in college, and when she gets there, realizes that her 2 friends ditched her completely to live with someone else, and she got assigned the other 3 characters. And she finds out that those high school friends didn't like her very much. They don't like how secretive she is and how mean she is. She's really, really upset about this and how her friends betrayed her. She's really mean to the 3 roommates that she did get assigned to. She doesn't seem to have any interest in becoming close with the new roommates like Kimberly and Whitney and Bella. She thinks they're kind of gross and poor and tacky. This girl is pretty elitist, but she eventually realizes that she was really mean to these new roommates, and she starts being more nice. She buys them iPads as a token of apology, and also gets them invited to cool parties at her brother's frat. Also at the beginning, she finds out she's really great at math and gets placed in a more advanced group for that. But she kind of leads this whole other double life where she is hooking up with girls. She has this app that's basically like a lesbian grinder where she finds hookups. And then after she's done, and she leaves immediately and blocks the person because she's so afraid of her lesbian life to leak into her real life where she is pretending to be straight. One of her hookups in one of the first few episodes tells her like she's living a lie and that's probably not the best thing, not super healthy. And Layton gets super pissed at her and gets wasted. She gets so wasted she vandalizes a school statue, and then she gets punished for that vandalism by like the dean or some important guy, and she gets sentenced to 100 hours of volunteer work at the school's women's center, which is a safe space for mostly like LGBTQ plus students. And Layton is very repulsed by a place like this. We can imagine she feels kind of threatened, possibly given her closeted status. But the no-nonsense leader of the women's center is named Alicia, and she doesn't let Layton get away with being as rude or dismissive as she wants of these hours. Once Layton starts warming up to the group a little bit, and mainly Alicia, Layton invites them to go to one of her brother's frat parties. She wants them to see that their frats aren't as bad as they think. They're making assumptions that frats are horrible because of like the things they see on the news. I'm on the side of the women's center people. Like, I agree frats are gross, and I never went to frat stuff. I mean, I'm not the type to be invited or anything. I wouldn't go as far as them to go to a frat party just cause. But they do, and Layton convinces Nico, her brother, to ditch all the problematic elements of the party, like racist stuff and sombreros, which kind of proves like frats are as shitty as they say, but you know, whatever. Things go pretty well at the party until the very end of the night. Alicia gets called a homophobic slur by a wasted guy at the party. She tries to like fight him, and Layton like pushes her back from that, and Alicia gets mad and storms off because she feels like Layton is on the side of the frat guy instead of her. Layton follows her and eventually comes out to her in that moment by kissing her, and they hook up. And we sort of left off with Layton for the very first time being convinced by a hookup to stay after, and she seems to be developing feelings for Alicia. So Layton's story really developed in the first 5 episodes from being someone that didn't want any of her double lives mixing. She's come to the point where they've mixed at this point. She has come out to someone at the school, which is a big deal. I imagine this is gonna become very complicated, and she's gonna resist and be upset potentially, or maybe try to date Alicia in secret, which is a sort of shitty thing to do. But I'm excited to see Layton really make progress with being more herself, and at least coming out to one person, because that seems to be a really big deal. She seems to be a really flawed character, and I know she's not likable, and she's kind of like more of a villainous character, but I like that. I like that there is a character like this that's mean to the other ones. It's more realistic of like college, of people not all wanting to sing Kumbaya, get along. Some of them are more into being friends with their roommates than others. I know I've raved a lot about this show, and I'm not paid by HBO Max. I wish I was, because I'm giving all this free promotion for nothing. I was trying to like fill my time waiting for new episodes of Sex Lives to come out. So I tried watching this movie called 8-Bit Christmas on HBO. It was basically like an ad for Nintendo Nostalgia starring Neil Patrick Harris. And I was like, oh, cute. This is like a retro gaming Christmas movie. That seems so cute. Until they said the word Nintendo like 15 times in 5 minutes. So I don't recommend that movie. It was stupid. And it seems like Nintendo is just trying to buy younger kids into the nostalgia of Nintendo, which isn't how nostalgia works. And then there was another show I saw that came up on my HBO. I think it's called like Head of the Class or something like that, and I was like, oh cute, a high school show. And it has the girl from One Day at a Time who played the daughter, who was a lesbian, and I feel so bad because I like that actress a lot, But I tried watching it and it was just so tragic. I was like, oh, HBO makes good comedies because they released Sex Lives of College Girls. Like, maybe this is similar. It was not similar. It was a sitcom that was so forced. Like, it felt like a parody of like conservatives writing something liberals want, using social media in stupid ways that made no sense. They made the teacher the main character and all the other characters are students. So it's really hard to intertwine their lives. It's super bad sitcom, like laugh track. I just don't know how it got greenlit. It was so cringy. And it made me appreciate the dialogue of Sex Lives of College Girls a lot more because if you want to see true cringy, like liberal media dialogue, just try like 5 minutes of the show and you will see. I learned that I don't love everything on HBO. So let me know what you think of Sex Lives of College Girls. I know that's a longer video, but I really want to discuss the 4 characters, and hopefully I'll do a part 2 discussing the end of this season, and it'll probably be shorter and just focus on the last 5 episodes. But let me know what you think, if you plan to watch, if you've watched. I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!